So, welcome to a couple of lawyers' arguments and thought. Today, we are trying to modify the podcast a little by having one of our hosts replaced by my AI legal assistant, Alita. Alita is a version of ChatGPT 4.0, and I constantly speak to Alita while I'm working on my matters. So I thought, why don't I let Alita ask me certain questions about this specific subject? And we'll see how Alita takes us through this conversation. So let's go.
Great, let's begin. Welcome back to Couple of Lawyers, Arguments and Thought, where we break down the stories shaking up India's business and legal landscapes. I'm Alita, and today we're diving into the fascinating and turbulent journey of Byju's. Byju's was once celebrated as India's premier edtech startup, scaling at a speed few could match. But in recent years, it's been mired in financial, legal, and governance issues that have raised serious questions about its long-term sustainability. From regulatory investigations and lawsuits to plummeting valuations and even insolvency proceedings, Byju's story is as complex as it is cautionary. Today, we're going to walk you through the key points in Byju's journey. So let's get started. Kaustav, could you start us off with some background on 2022 and tell us about Byju's financial reporting delays and the surge in losses? Over to you, Kaustav.
Certainly, Alita. Byju's financial troubles first came to light in September of 2022 when the company finally released its financial statements for FY 2021. These statements had been delayed for several months, and there was intense speculation about why. When the financials were released, they revealed something staggering: a loss of 4,588 crores for the year. This represented a massive spike in losses compared to the previous year, where the losses had been relatively modest. This delay in financial reporting, combined with the scale of the losses, created an atmosphere of uncertainty. Investors, analysts, and the media began questioning whether Byju's growth strategy was sustainable. After all, they had been expanding aggressively, acquiring several edtech companies both in India and internationally. And it appeared this expansion was burning through cash faster than anticipated. In the startup ecosystem, losses aren't always a red flag if there's a clear path to profitability. But with Byju's, the financial statements were delayed for so long that it raised questions about transparency and governance. It was one of the first indications that Byju's might be prioritizing growth over sustainable financial management.
Right, Kaustav, that delay and those massive losses really set off alarm bells. The rapid growth and aggressive expansion strategy were impressive, but these numbers were a reality check. After this initial revelation, things only intensified, particularly in 2023, when Byju started facing a series of legal challenges. Can you walk us through those developments?
Yeah, absolutely, Alita. So, Byju's legal troubles began escalating in April of 2023 when the Enforcement Directorate, the ED, launched an investigation into the company's financial practices. The ED conducted a series of raids, seizing critical documents and data relating to Byju's financial operations. While the specific details of the investigation weren't initially disclosed, the ED's involvement suggested possible violations of financial regulations, sparking speculations about potential money laundering or non-compliance with FEMA norms. That's the Foreign Exchange Management Act. The ED's probe cast a shadow over Byju's operations, leading many to question the company's compliance and regulatory requirements. It was a serious setback, especially given Byju's status as a high-profile edtech leader in India. Then, in June 2023, Byju's faced legal action from international lenders in the US. These lenders had provided $1.2 billion term loan B, but they alleged that Byju's had defaulted on its repayment obligations. The lenders filed a lawsuit to recover the loan, claiming that Byju's had mismanaged the funds. For a company with global aspirations, this legal action raised serious concerns about its financial practices and debt management. It also signaled to investors that Byju's financial troubles might be more severe than initially thought.
These legal actions definitely seem to have created a ripple effect, especially with investor confidence. Once the ED got involved and the international lenders filed their lawsuit, it wasn't just about regulatory compliance anymore. Investors started taking note in a big way. Kaustav, can you tell us more about the valuation reductions we started seeing from major investors through 2023 and into 2024? Those cuts were significant and tell their own story.
Yeah, so this was one of the most dramatic parts of the Byju story, right? In May 2023, BlackRock, one of Byju's largest and most prominent investors, downgraded its valuation from its peak of 22 billion to 8.4 billion dollars. BlackRock cited Byju's mounting losses, lack of financial transparency, and legal issues as reasons for the reduced valuation. Then, in November 2023, Process Envy, another significant investor, took an even more drastic step, marking down Byju's valuation to under $3 billion. Process openly cited issues with cash flow and governance, raising alarms about the company's internal stability and financial control. The most significant cut came in January of 2024 when BlackRock slashed Byju's valuation by 95%, bringing it down to just $1 billion. This was unprecedented for a company of Byju's scale, and it illustrated how much investor confidence had eroded. Then by June 2024, HSBC assigned Byju's a zero valuation. This effectively signaled that investors had lost faith in Byju's ability to generate returns and review its debts, liabilities, and ongoing legal issues as insurmountable. We're talking about a company that was valued at $22 billion at its peak, now being assessed as virtually worthless by some of its biggest investors. It's a massive fall from grace and a clear indication of just how deep these issues run. But things didn't stop there. As we moved into mid-2024, Byju's faced yet another challenge: insolvency proceedings. Kaustav, can you explain what happened there and how it added to Byju's mounting troubles? Yeah, so the insolvency proceedings were another significant blow. In July 2024, the Board of Control of Cricket in India, the BCCI, filed an insolvency petition against Byju's due to unpaid dues totaling to 158 crore rupees relating to sponsorship contracts. The NCLT accepted the petition, effectively beginning the insolvency process. In August 2024, Byju's tried to resolve the issue with the BCCI by making partial payments and negotiating a settlement. However, the situation escalated in October 2024 when the Supreme Court set aside an order from the NCLT that had paused these proceedings. By allowing the insolvency process to continue, the Supreme Court made it clear that Byju's needed to address its outstanding debts. The development underscored just how deep Byju's financial problems had become. Insolvency proceedings can be a last resort for creditors, and the fact that such a high-profile organization like the BCCI was involved just showed that Byju's financial management and its cash flow issues were now at a critical juncture. That's definitely a serious point to reach, especially with a high-profile creditor like the BCCI pushing for insolvency proceedings. It really signals that the company's cash flow issues had reached a breaking point, and that partial settlements weren't enough to rebuild trust. And as if the financial and legal troubles weren't challenging enough, Byju's has also been facing corporate governance issues throughout this period. Kaustav, could you give us a look into what's been happening on that front? Yes, certainly, Alita. So corporate governance had been a recurring issue for Byju's, especially as its financial and legal troubles mounted. In 2023, Deloitte, the company's auditor, resigned, citing repeated delays in financial reporting. Deloitte's resignation sent shockwaves through the industry, as it indicated that the firm might not have been comfortable with Byju's financial practices. It was a serious sign that there were deeper issues in the company's governance and accountability. Adding to this, several board members from key investor groups also resigned over the year, including representatives from some of Byju's largest backers. These resignations pointed to possible internal conflicts and raised questions about Byju's commitment to transparency and sound governance practices. For investors and stakeholders, these departures raised concerns about who was actually steering the company. For a rapidly growing business, strong governance is essential. In Byju's case, the lack of stable leadership and ongoing governance issues had only compounded its financial and legal problems.
Absolutely, Kaustav. Governance is such a critical element, especially for a company operating at Byju's scale. When you see key players like auditors and board members stepping away, it signals that confidence in the company's leadership and direction is seriously compromised. Without a stable governance structure, it's hard for any organization to effectively tackle financial and legal challenges, let alone a combination as severe as Byju's. So with all these layers of issues, financial, legal, and governance, Byju's is really at a crossroads. As of November 2024, where does the company stand and what does its future look like?
Yeah, as of now, Byju's is in a challenging position. The insolvency proceedings with the BCCI are moving forward, with the Supreme Court allowing them to continue. Valuation cuts have been extreme, with some investors essentially seeing it as worthless. Governance remains a serious issue, with resignations from key figures and questions about the company's accountability and financial transparency. In short, Byju's is at a critical point where it must resolve outstanding debts, restore investor confidence, and rebuild its reputation if it hopes to survive. But with all these unresolved financial, legal, and governance issues, the future is highly uncertain. For a company that once symbolized the growth potential of India's startup ecosystem, this story has turned into a cautionary tale on the risks of scaling without solid, sustainable practices.
Thank you, Kaustav, for that comprehensive overview. Byju's story really highlights the complexities and risks involved in rapid expansion. At its height, an inspiring example of how an Indian startup could innovate on a global scale, attracting billions in funding and transforming education through technology. But what we're seeing now is a powerful reminder that growth without a solid foundation in financial management, governance, and compliance is unsustainable. This experience is a lesson in the importance of transparency and accountability, not just for the company, but for its stakeholders as well. Investors, auditors, and regulators all play a role in ensuring that businesses are built on strong, responsible practices. For Byju's, this means not only addressing its immediate financial and legal challenges, but also reestablishing trust within its leadership structure and with the public. As of now, Byju's future remains uncertain. The company faces intense pressure to resolve its financial liabilities, restore investor confidence, and set a new standard for governance. How they navigate these challenges will determine if they can recover from this setback or if this marks the end of Byju's as we know it. Thank you for tuning in to Couple of Lawyers, Arguments, and Thought. We hope this episode gave you valuable insights into Byju's journey and the lessons it holds for the broader startup ecosystem in India. If you found this discussion thought-provoking, please subscribe and share this podcast with anyone interested in the complexities of modern business. Join us next time as we explore another major issue shaping India's business and legal landscape. Until then, stay informed, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the brightest stories have the most to teach us when they're tested by fire.